Called the Global Weather Experiment, it lasted throughout 1979 and involved several thousand scientists and technicians in the most massive intelligence-gathering operation ever focused on our planet. Our most sophisticated tools and resources were deployed over every part of the globe and in the sky. Here's why. There are 4 billion people on Earth now. By the year 2000, we'll total 6 billion, and that big number raises some big questions. How to produce food for us all, how to deal with the changes we're causing in our planet, how to live within the limits of the Earth. The answers may well depend on a knowledge we don't yet possess, a knowledge of the world weather system as a whole. The Global Weather Experiment was a first step in the right direction, say scientists, and a giant one. Analyzing all the information gathered will likely take them, even with computers, a decade. Next time, a look at one of the most critical weather phenomena in the world, the monsoon rains. I'm Dan Atkinson with WeatherBeat. Monsoon is an Arabic word. It means seasonal wind. We're familiar with the daily reversal of winds along our own Gulf Coast, where by day cool air from the sea flows in to replace warmer air over the land, and by night, when the sea is warmer, the land supplies the breeze. There are places in the world, however, India among them, where geography sets in motion winds which blow steadily from the land through the winter, then from the sea throughout the summer. These monsoon winds make the winter dry and the summers wet, extremely wet. The summer monsoon is life-giving, or can be if it brings the rain in time and if it brings enough but not too much rain. Otherwise, crops fail and millions suffer. During the year-long Global Weather Experiment of 1979, scientists from around the world watched and measured India's summer monsoon as it came and went. And their findings may help half the world's people draw from these seasonal winds more good and less harm. I'm Dan Atkinson with WeatherBeat.
Well, I feel they're our people and that they deserve the best, and that if that's what it takes, that's what we should do to get them back.
I don't think the United States should submit to this type of thing, but I think that we should try to arbitrate some sort of a business that would get these kids home.
Well, if I had a son or a husband over there, it would be worth it to me.
It'd be worth the money.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah, I think so.
Listen, we got a bunch of families that's spent 2 Christmases without their kids, and I was a prisoner of war, and I know how they feel.
The new minimum wage of $3.35 an hour will affect all businesses and employees engaged in interstate commerce. This includes most retail stores, laundry and dry cleaning, and clerical jobs. Employees who work for tips and salaries are not required to be paid the new standard, but they will receive an increase.
The tipped employees' minimum wage will go up too. Tipped employees such as waitresses and waiters, the employer of those employees are required to pay 60% of the minimum wage, provided they get the other 40% in tips. 60% of $3.35 an hour is $2.01 an hour.
Some businesses are exempt from the wage increase, such as small retail stores grossing less than $325,000 a year. City, county, and state employees are also excluded due to a 1976 Supreme Court decision. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Good morning, Bill.
Well, good afternoon yet.
Just about.
We gotta hurry then.
Got the back 40 to 10 to this afternoon yet? We'll make it quick.
Tony?
Excuse me, Coach.
I don't know, INSJR.
Coach, will you approach this game differently now that apparently the national championship is not in the offing?
I don't think we'll approach it differently. So far as our preparation. But I think I want to have a good time. And but I want to have a good time any time. And of course, the best time they can have is playing the game. they like to play football because Baylor's challenging them, no doubt about that. And we're going to give them more time to themselves. But the biggest time they can have is during the game. They like to play football. And I think they do like to play football. If they don't, well, we're going to be wasting a trip.
She was talking to somebody else at the stand. I didn't even see it until later. I was looking through the tape.
Yeah. There you go.
Saw him in a long time. He did it.
This has a number.
747. He's going to come in.
Oh.
Yeah, right on it. Right on. I tell you, he'll be working.
Telephone officials expect over 1 million telephone calls in Alabama this Christmas, which is a 10% increase over last year. Local telephone representative Tom Somerville says most people make their calls on Christmas morning.
Well, I guess we all are in the habit of getting up and opening presents and having breakfast, and then everybody tries to call family and friends right during those Christmas morning hours. So that is traditionally an extremely busy time of the year. It's an extremely busy calling period.
Somerville says more operators will be needed that day to handle the increased volume of calls. But if you want to save time and money, there are a few things you should keep in mind. When calling between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., you'll get a 35% discount on direct dial calls. But when calling after 11 at night, you'll get a 60% discount. The least busy time to call is usually between 3 and 6 p.m. Dialing direct is a must, and if circuits are busy, wait a few minutes before trying again rather than going through an operator. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Okay, the Emergency Petroleum Allocation Act was started back in 1973 as a direct result of the Arab oil embargo. It has been deregulated, I think, since October of last year on a phased deregulation, month by month, planned to achieve total deregulation by the end of September of this year. Right now, the middle distillates, diesel fuel, heating oil, and propane are not controlled. Gasoline is controlled. But the total price controls will be off for crude oil, gasoline, and everything else by the end of September.
A lot of people fear, I think, that when there is total decontrol of prices, that they'll suddenly just go completely out of sight, that we'll be looking at $5 a gallon gasoline and that kind of thing. Do you see that happening with decontrol?
No, I don't think so. I think the private enterprise system in this country is the greatest system there ever has been. I think it'll do much better than government control. The prices will rise, but they will rise to world market levels. Unless there were times of shortage, and fairly extreme shortages, I don't think you'd see exceptional prices in this country. I think the prices will rise. I think they'll keep pace with world market prices when it's decontrolled. But while I don't want to pay any more for my gasoline than anybody else, I think that would be a good thing, because then the producers would be able to produce from marginal wells. One of the things they haven't been able to do in this country is produce from all the wells that are capable of producing, because some of them have been too expensive. They're too deep or too hard to get the oil out. But with deregulation, I think then these marginal wells could produce, and if the demand is there, they'll produce it at whatever price it takes.
Television. I think we get this information above. But, why don't we do it? And then, get our public function. We find what we want to pursue. But as we find. I would say that's money that could have been used for research.
Not a big adjustment one way or the other, but it was a slight under-collection by the company. The basic factor this month is the adjustment for November detachment in and out. The biggest units, of course, being Farley, Gorgas, 10, and in particular the Farley.
That are emanating from the keyed slot right now. We
never have done it, why not research where it is?
For presentation. 1,962,210 megawatts.
Estimated average cost a month, that's correct.
Right. Now, going down below estimated net purchased energy.
Yes, sir.
Capitol officials are still hopeful that the star was removed by some of the men working on the Capitol renovation project. They first noticed it missing on Sunday, and since then officials have no clues. But Governor James' press secretary Chris Bentz says the missing star is a copy of the original.
3 years ago, this is the original that I have here. This is the original Jeff Davis star. As you can see, it was beginning to really show some wear and tear, and even right here, the star was beginning to crack open. And it is an historical object. So I feel sure that about 3 years ago, state officials decided that to preserve the star, the original star, it should be taken out, and a replica of which there are two, like this one here, be put in.
All three stars are made of bronze. Ben says there's no way to tell the monetary and historical value of the original. Capitol Security Police are still investigating the case, but in the meantime, officials are hopeful that whoever took the star will return it perhaps in the spirit of Christmas. They say no further action will be taken against the person responsible. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
December 1979, the prime rate is 14%. By January 1980, 1 month later, it had jumped 6 points to 20%. By February and March of this year, a short recession sent the prime to 11%. 7 months later, in October, another upward spiral began, and the prime hit 21.5% last month. Banks were barometers of the impact the high interest rates had on small businesses. Many car dealers were making as few as one sale per month. Farmers already suffering from crop failures were unable to pay off existing loans and unable to afford the huge rates in effect for new loans. Now, independent bankers like Ben Oakley are leading a fight to lower rates to at least 18%. He hopes other lending institutions will follow. Oakley says what New York banks charge for a loan should not affect the average Alabamian's ability to get financial help.
It makes no more sense to charge New York rates for loans in Columbia, Alabama, than it does to charge New York rates for any other commodity sold in this state. The rate for lending money should be based upon the cost factors involved in making that loan and a reasonable profit margin for providing the service. The cost of money and the cost of operation is much lower in Columbia, Alabama than it is in New York City. Therefore, I can lend money to the people of my community at a rate much lower than prime and still make an honest and fair profit for my stockholders.
Oakley says the state faces the collapse of many local segments of the economy if the prime rate isn't rejected as a means of setting the local interest rates and a move to a cost-plus profit system of making loans isn't started. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA-TV News reporting.
February 13th, 1981. Item 8, letter from Spanish line 390 feet northeast of Moses Street. Need a motion.
The license will not be issued until it has been.
Documents for action. So you'll need to be. Item 7, letter from the Planning Commission recommending rezoning.
Chris, what do you remember about that game as far as it concerns James Brooks?
What I remember most is number 21 following him all over the field. And, you know, we scouted him all week, and we knew that he was going to be running the ball a lot. And, you know, he's a great back, and I just remember trying to run him down all day.
Your assignment was to take care of Jimmy Brooks. Huh?
Right, my assignment was to stop him from getting on the outside, and I did the best I could.
I don't recall how many times you guys ran together, but it was quite a few, huh?
On my paper sheet, my grade sheet, I had 18 tackles on it, so I ran into him a lot. Yeah.
Did you know Chris Williams before that night, James?
Not before. I seen the scout report, all that, but after the game, I remember the number. You know, all night long he was in my face, all that. You know.
Wasn't it? It looks to me like you guys were about even, though. You gave a little, and he gave a little. It seemed during the night.
Oh, it was like, well, you know, two athletes just like that beating against each other. You know, you try to do your best. I think both of us did our best. You know, that's how it come out sometimes.
You glad he's on your side?
And not in my face all the time, you know. It's good to see you on somebody else stop there.
Did you shake his hand when you saw him here?
Well, we talked all that, but, you know, we're trying to get ready for this game.
Yeah.
The question of OPEC dependency keeps coming up over and over again. Exactly what would it take for this country to get away from its dependency on OPEC, to tell OPEC we don't need your oil, we're going to do it here at home?
Let me give you one scenario, that if this country were to build 100 plants, each plant producing 50,000 barrels of oil a day from either coal, oil shale, tar sands, or something of this nature, we would then be producing 5 million barrels a day more oil than we're producing today. Today, this country uses about 16.5 million barrels a day. It produces about 10, and if we kept producing 10 and produced this 5 million more, we'd have 15, so we'd be awfully close to what we need. And I think we could cut out the other 1.5 million through judicial use of the energy. And at that point, I think we could do without OPEC oil.
One thing that I've heard a lot of people say, gee, if only we could do without OPEC, we could get the prices down. Is that true?
I don't think the prices would come down without OPEC, no. I think that all the alternatives are going to be as expensive as OPEC now. I believe if you project the price of oil derived from coal, right now it would be higher than OPEC oil. But I think in the future they'd cross over where OPEC will keep going up because eventually the world will run out of oil. If you take all the oil that's known to exist in the world today, divide that by current world consumption, it comes out with something like 28 years. Now that doesn't mean we're going to run out in 28 years. It means if no more oil is found, if we continue to use it at the same rate we're using it now.
If we don't find alternate sources.
Yes, then we would. And if we could suck it out of the ground as fast as we want to, then we'd run out of oil. The important thing is whether it's 26 years, 52, or 100 years, the world is running out of oil. We have significant amounts of oil in the form of coal, shale, and tar sands in this country. And if we could let private industry develop these resources, I think in time, if they're not already, in time they would be competitive with any source of fuel.
Good morning, I'm Kim Davis, and this is the TV 12 News Update. Wyoming football coach Pat Dye has resigned. Dye returned to Wyoming last night after his second interview with Auburn University officials. He's reportedly one of the top 3 candidates for the job at Auburn. Chairman Ben Oakley of the state's independent bankers group is urging Alabama bankers to lower their interest rate and not use the prime interest rate set by New York bankers. Reportedly, other banks in Alabama have agreed to review their costs for lending money and lower the interest rate. Montgomery police are still investigating the early morning shooting of a Montgomery man. Officials say the man was shot while walking through a vacant house on the city's east side. The man was reportedly mistaken for an auto thief the police had been chasing. Police say he had been staying in the vacant house because his home was full of Christmas visitors. Dothan and Montgomery police have charged Fort Rucker Army Major Columbus Prim with 5 counts of burglary at Dothan motels and 1 count each of rape and robbery at a Montgomery motel. Prim was arrested earlier this month accused of raping a woman at gunpoint in a Dothan motel. The January adjustment charge is up $1.64 per kilowatt hour, but the Public Service Commission deferred part of that increase until February. About a dozen Cuban refugees in Talladega prison are spending Christmas at a federal prison because of problems in finding them sponsors and because immigration and naturalization officials are still processing their paperwork. Here's some early...
An appeal to the State Department made the transatlantic phone call a reality for Soviet immigration supporter Janie Drake. Mrs. Drake says she had tried calling the Vashenko family at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow many times before, only to be turned down. The State Department finally told her she could make the call on Christmas Eve between 5 and 9 a.m. With the help of an interpreter, Mrs. Drake asked Liba Vashenko about the family's health and about correspondence between American supporters and the Soviet family.
We sent you a lot of Christmas cards. We sent you a lot of Christmas cards. You will get them soon.
This year we received so little Christmas cards and letters. And I wrote here, last year on November we got 85 only. This year only 15.
Only how many?
Only 15.
15? I put in 500 Christmas cards myself into the post office. You're getting cards. Maybe they're not delivered.
Mrs. Drake says the call was probably monitored by Soviet and American officials alike. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
The top of my Christmas list, seriously, would be that the people of Montgomery and this area recognize that we have the greatest gift in the world to us, at recognizing the Christmas season and the Christ child, and that we regroup and rethink, and that we recognize that our lives and our times are in God's hands. I would hope that everybody would have a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year, that the city of Montgomery would enjoy peace and reasonable prosperity in 1981, that we could move forward with the things we're trying to do, and that people could live a quiet and peaceable life.
Do you like chewing gum? Do you like chewing oranges? You've got an orange one. What got something for you? You don't have to chew. Open this up. Right. There you go. Is that okay, Mama?
This is the new Atlantic Southeast airline jet, fresh from the factory in Brazil that will begin serving the Montgomery area January 11th. The aircraft made a proving run into Danley Field for flight certification as required by the FAA. The 18-passenger jet will have 4 daily flights to Atlanta. It's different from larger passenger aircrafts not only in size but interior design. It's leather. Another major difference is economy.
We think it'll be particularly effective in markets such as Montgomery, Atlanta, due to the low fuel consumption. Primary expense today in the aviation industry is obviously the fuel bill, and this airplane has a very attractive rate of consumption.
Beiser, who's one of the corporation's 3 vice presidents, says the airline has had its eye on serving Montgomery for about a year now. He says he hopes to do business with other cities in Alabama in the near future. The airline starts flight service in Anniston January 15th. Atlantic Southeast Airline originates out of Columbus, Georgia. It now has 38 daily flights from several cities to Atlanta. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
The whole thing started early this morning when police were searching the Shadow Lane area for a car thief. Chief Swindle says officers saw a man armed with a rifle standing inside a vacant house and apparently mistook him for the suspect. Swindle says they ordered the man to put down the gun several times before firing at him.
The subject either didn't hear him or didn't respond. Well, they pointed the rifle at the officer and the officer fired one shot through the window.
He was in full uniform.
It turns out the vacant house belongs to Harrelson's mother, and he was apparently staying there because he had a house full of relatives. Chief Swindle says Officer McGilvery acted exactly the way he was trained. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News. This is the way the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity shows its appreciation to the Montgomery Fire Department. The frat members stayed up all last night cooking so they could deliver Christmas dinners to each of the 12 fire stations today. The fraternity started the Christmas Day delivery 2 years ago when they realized that firemen are some of the few people who spend this special day working for the sake of Montgomery citizens.
One of our brothers was working in one of the grocery stores, and one of the firemen came in looking for some lunch meat, and we just decided that it really wasn't fair for them to have to sacrifice their Christmas. So we decided that we'd start cooking them a dinner every year.
The fraternity members say they don't mind spending their holiday this way. It's their special thank you to the city of Montgomery. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
If Mayor Emery Fulmer has his way, the historical preservation of Union Station may finally see some progress. The General Services Administration in Washington was supposed to restore Union Station, but Mayor Fulmer is displeased with their progress. So one of the mayor's New Year's resolutions is to ask council to step in and take action.
The city bought Union Station from the L&N Railroad about 10 years ago. The building was donated to GSA for renovation and restoration purposes last year. Through the Living Buildings Act, the city and GSA have been working together to restore the structure, but now Mayor Fulmer says the refurbishing project has been stalled.
However, there's so much private interest in the area now that if General Services does not move shortly after the first of the year, I will recommend several new programs to the council for it. There's a lot.
Any indication of what any of those might be?
Well, I can't, because at the moment the people that have been speaking to me have asked to not be disclosed, but there's several types of businesses that would like to move into that area.
The mayor says the private sectors expressing an interest in Union Station want to pump big money into the project. He says action must be taken soon because the building has been idle much too long. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News at Union Station.
Gaines was shocked when told he had received one of swimming's highest honors. He expected a Russian to win it. After all, Soviet swimmers received great international recognition at the Moscow Olympics, an event boycotted by the United States. Before being named World Swimmer of the Year, Gaines' greatest accomplishment had come last spring. He set a world record in the 200-meter freestyle at the U.S. National Indoor Championships. Just hours before that race, Rowdy learned that there would be no U.S. participation in Moscow.
Deep inside, I wanted to kind of, it sounds a little rough, but I wanted to get revenge, you know. I wanted to win. I wanted to break that world record because next to an Olympic gold medal, you know, that's the biggest thrill, you know, of pretty much any athlete's life.
The 21-year-old mass communications major at Auburn joins an impressive list of American swimmers who have been named World Swimmer of the Year. Mark Spitz, John Neighbor, and Brian Goodell, to name a few. According to Auburn swim coach Richard Quick, Gaines is on his way to becoming an even more dominant figure in swimming in 1981 than he was in 1980. Quick describes his prize swimmer as an amazing athlete and inspirational leader.
The difference is that Rowdy has the special ability to push himself to his full potential. In training, he gives himself every opportunity to reach his full potential, and he doesn't do anything to beat himself.
Rowdy Gaines, Auburn's Athlete of the Year and the world's Swimmer of the Year. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The experts will tell you to be a world-class swimmer, you have to put in 4 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, and start it all at a very young age. That is, of course, unless you're Rowdy Gaines. This Winter Haven High School graduate began swimming competitively at the unheard-of age of 17.
I was too small for football, not tall enough for basketball, and my parents just recommended to me that I try out for it. My sister was a real good swimmer at the time, and I just thought I'd give it a shot.
And it was a shot heard round the world. Only 3 years after he began swimming, Rowdy was an All-American, a world record holder, and a member of the Olympic team. Many observers feel Gaines could have won 4 gold medals at the recent Summer Olympics, but Rowdy didn't get to compete in Moscow because of the boycott. With the United States not attending the Olympics, Andrei Kopylakov of the Soviet Union won the gold medal in the 200 free, the event in which Gaines holds the world record. Rowdy gets a chance to swim against the Russian at an international meet in Gainesville next month.
He broke the world record in '79. I broke his record in '80. It's going to be tough. It really is. It's going to be a real good contest.
Rowdy is in his last year as a competitive swimmer, and the 21-year-old Auburn University senior wants to make it a year to remember.
It's hard to set goals. I'd like just to go out with a bang at NC2As.
And who can stop him?
In all likelihood, Blue-Gray football fans will be in for a real treat. Looking at every phase of the game, running, passing, and kicking, the 43rd annual matchup of the best college football talent from the North and South should indeed be a classic. For the Grays to begin with, there's Joe 747 Adams, the all-time NCAA record holder for touchdown passes with 81. He also ranked 3rd this year in total offense. Adams' counterpart, Jay Venuto, ranked 8th in that department with almost 2,500 yards passing and running. Auburn's Byron Franklin and Troy State's Willie Tullis will join Ken Toller of Ole Miss and Mike Mosley of Texas A&M in the receiving corps. Two of the nation's top ground gainers, Auburn's James Brooks and Stump Mitchell of the Citadel, had well over a half-mile rushing between them in 1980. Mitchell averaged almost 150 yards a game. Brooks 119.5 yards per game. Gray recruiter Frank Howard shopped for a big back to complement Brooks and Mitchell. He came up with Arrington Jones of Winston-Salem. Jones at 6'2", 225, runs with the power you would expect from a big man. Handling the place-kicking chores for the Gray team is Obed Ariri of Clemson. He rewrote the all-time NCAA record book in 1980, 60 field goals in his college career. Eric Hipp, a deadly accurate soccer-style kicker from USC, will counter for the Blues. You may remember Hipp won the Tennessee game with a last-second field goal. The Yanks have a pair of good quarterbacks. Running the ground-oriented Drake offense this year, Rick Casco, who finished 7th nationally in total offense. He's not afraid to throw it, nor is his backup for the Blues, Harvard's Brian Buckley, who has the distinct advantage of playing tomorrow for his college head coach, Joe Resnick. USC's Kevin Williams headlines the Blues catching corps. Williams is the second leading touchdown pass catcher in Pac-10 history. Iowa's Keith Chabelle, Mike Feinstock of Army, Dayton's Jim Jensen, and Randy Sonnenfield of Minnesota are the other Blue receivers. The Yankee running backs might be mistaken for Sherman Tanks. They are big and powerful. Take, for instance, Marion Barber of Minnesota, 6'3", 231, twice in all Big Ten selection. An outstanding array of stars for both the Blues and the Grays. Kickoff set for 2 o'clock at Crampton Bowl. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know.
People from all over the city stop by O.B. Porterfield's house during the Christmas holidays to see what type of decorations he's come up with each year. Porterfield is the minister of the Church of Christ Church on Siebel's Road, and he's also a collector of sorts.
Well, the first year we started putting up, we didn't have many decorations, and it seemed like in Montgomery, a lot of people, don't put up decorations, or a lot of them, so we were just amazed at how people enjoyed them. So we really put them up because so many people enjoy them, and we get a lot of enjoyment out of seeing them.
One special asset to all these bright lights is the music, which is pre-recorded and broadcast over a loudspeaker. This year's new addition are the Christmas lights in the treetops, which reach over 60 feet in the air. Porterfield says he collects decorations from year to year. He says he's gotten most of his pieces from Mississippi and, of course, at local after-Christmas sales. You may notice that none of the decorations have any religious significance. He says members of his church celebrate Christmas as if it were a holiday like the 4th of July. So why does he go to so much trouble?
We have them from little bitty people to, I think, the oldest we've had is in the 90s. And it seems that all age groups like a lot of lights and a lot of decorations and from all walks of life. And we have a lot of them to come by.
Porterfield says his neighbors don't seem to mind the lights or the music. In fact, he says many ask when the display will go up because they want to make sure their yards are clean.
And may all your Christmases be white.
Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Since the revamping of the Energy Department here in Alabama this past May, what kind of things have changed? What kind of changes are you looking for in the future?
Well, it wasn't so much a revamping as just a creation of an Alabama Department of Energy. See, prior to May of this year, we existed as the Alabama Energy Management Board, and we had existed by executive order of the governor and had never received any state funds. We were relying solely on federal funds. And when you get federal funds, you can only do the things that the federal government wants you to do. Well, the legislature, recognizing that the problem wouldn't go away, in May of this year passed a bill setting up an Alabama Department of Energy and creating some state funds. This now will give the department some discretion in the use of the money it gets from the state. That's how we can move into the things that are specifically good in Alabama, like resource development. The legislation does require us to develop a state energy plan. It requires us to set up energy policy for the state and go into resource development, coordinate research and development efforts around the state, and help generally promote the things that are good for Alabama in the energy area, as well as doing the various conservation programs that are ongoing and have been for some time from the federal government. We are developing contingency plans in case something happens. The federal government has asked us to develop emergency energy conservation plans for times of shortage between adequate supplies and somewhere less than 20% shortage.
Now, 20% being the cutoff.